Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Our show is brought to you by UCAN. On today's episode, we have Dex Hopkins and Brent Fikowski here to discuss the changes that have been made to the 2023 CrossFit Games season and whether this is a positive direction for the sport. I think we all can agree, though, it's nice to have the news well in advance of the season start. So we're off to a good start, right?
Yeah, just lines of communication. They're so open, transparent right now. Come on.
Yeah,
Brent-
I like that it's super early. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, that's good.
So let's start at the beginning. Now, we knew the dates of the 2023 Open, which will kick off on February 16th, but we have a bigger picture with some more dates and even some changes to the upcoming season. Looking at the Open, they're going back to the system where athletes must complete the Open workouts at an affiliate and are eliminating the use of a registered judge as the only way of validating scores. Athletes are also able to submit a video, so if you still want to do it in your home garage, that's okay as well. Do you guys think that this is a better way and a better structure to not solely rely on those registered judges?
You go, Dex.
Yeah, I like anything. It seems like it's a drive back to like, hey, get your ass an affiliate, which I'm always a fan of, especially in that phase of the game, right? Like my favorite time of the year, athlete, coach, whatever, is Friday Night Lights, whether I'm doing it, coaching it, organizing it, whatever. So anything that seems to be a drive back to that and keeping that exciting, which I think the new format last year, the 3 weeks, if you're an affiliate guy, that week 4 and 5, it's so hard to get people to show up, and the give a shit drops off so bad that with that system, if they're going to keep the 3 weeks and you're going to kind of make a push to get people back in there, I don't see that as a bad thing at all. And I'd love to see like garage people start having to submit live videos like they used to on the old scoreboard, where you could come down the leaderboard and click their video and just tear them apart, which now is a separate sport. So
I guess we'll wait for more details on exactly how that's going to go. Something else that we learned is that quarterfinals, it looks like at this point, everything is staying the same, but really the biggest change is the format of semifinals. Seeding is gone. Athletes will compete in regions based on their country of citizenship, which in turn reduces the amount of semifinals. Originally, we had 10, and now we're only going to have 7, with only 2 semifinals now in North America, splitting it with athletes in the Eastern and Western regions. So let's first discuss, Brent, how this region style impacts the athletes, both with travel and also knowing ahead of time.
Yeah, I think, whenever these changes happen, myself included, there's a little bit of like excitement and maybe a bit of panic. At the end of the day, it doesn't really change how you train. This stuff never really does, maybe slightly like logistically leading up to an event. It's like, oh, I have 2 more weeks or I have 2 less weeks to prepare. But training doesn't really change. I memean, I just finished training and I was like thinking about whenever there's these changes, I'm like, what should I change? I'm like, well, nothing. Still got to get better burpees. But I like the biggest, or whatever, thrusters, whatever it is for you. Everyone needs to get better burpees. But I think what's really nice from an athlete perspective, from a fan perspective, is you're going to know what your season looks like so much sooner. So like the last 2 years in 2021 and 2022, I didn't know which semi I was going to until, like a month before it happened. So it's hard for me to plan my life. It's hard for anyone who wants to see me, whether it's like people at the local gym, whether it's my family a couple provinces over, or just like maybe there's a fan in the States who's like, oh, I've always wanted to see Brent. It's just like they have to have their whole life on pause for an entire month and a half, hoping they can make it. And so this should increase attendance, I think. And then from an athlete perspective, it's just nice to know. Once they announce, obviously I'll be in the West region or semi. And once they say, let's say it's in Vegas or Cali or wherever it is, it's like I can just put that on my calendar and plan my life.
Yeah, and it looks like they're going to be announcing which semifinals will happen in the location of them at the start of the Open. That way athletes can plan. But here, if we pull up a map of how they are breaking it up, any concerns or like points of notice that you see when we're looking specifically at North America and how they break up who's in the Western region versus the Eastern?
that West is loaded. It's a big chunk of America and where all those people live. So yeah.
I can't really speak to, I'm sure Morning Chalk will do this. they can have a peek as to which athletes live in what area. I know in Canada, it looks like the borders are unchanged. So it's Manitoba and West, which is what it's always been for Canada West when it was back in like regionals. So anyone in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and westward from there is obviously competing in the West. And then, I don't really know enough about like where every single American male and female lives to say whether or not one semi is going to be more competitive than another, or like more people in quarters than another. Can't really say without doing the research. I'll let you guys do that.
Yeah, no, it would be interesting though to see like which athletes reside in which areas, and then kind of picking them out ourselves before we actually get a location. But speaking of the location of the athletes, they are having people compete at the semifinal based on their citizenship, not residents. The first thing that kind of comes to my mind is an athlete like Roman Krenikov. Any concerns? And again, we don't have the full picture yet. We don't have all of the answers, whether there's that he will have to go home to compete. But what are your initial thoughts when you hear that athletes will compete based on citizenship rather than residence?
That's so weird to me. It's always been like the national championship that year was weird to me when like 6 of them lived in America, and like you work here, you've lived here since you were 4 or something like that. And all that stuff's, I don't know. I liked when and we're going back to, like Brent said, the line in Canada didn't change. I had to ask Hill to make sure where Canada East and West was, but it's very regional-esque. And like my favorite thing used to be, and it's a lot of people's not favorite thing. You had the rough card drawn to you, like if you lived in Central East, or wherever the ballers were that year. And that looks like the West this year as far as like America's concerned, just for density of high level athletes. But yeah, I mean that's a weird thing, and he's like a special case, right? Like it took so long to get the guy over here. The package was delivered as expected, does really well at the games and under the lights, and he had to go do stuff for semis this year, and it just felt super risky. Could not believe he got back. I know our entire camp was sweating about it, like Nick sweating bullets. So it's this seems weird to me, but I like this system. So that's the worst evil.
And you guys brought up that this does feel like regionals. And another way that it kind of does is last year, CrossFit, they standardized 2 of the workouts, but now it's back where they're going to be standardizing all of the workouts. Is this a better structure and a better way to filter people into the games?
I think everyone has a different opinion on that. From what I heard, I think from most athletes and coaches I spoke with, they are going to prefer this. Oh, there goes Dex.
Yep.
Must have been pissed.
He disagrees with you.
No, he disagrees. I'm out of here. Screw this guy. No, from what I heard, most athletes and coaches would prefer this. So I think it'll be mostly well received. I'm kind of somewhere in between. I think I guess my opinion is every year the test, let's say, in previous years regionals, every year regionals changed quite a bit. And so I didn't really see why people were okay with it changing year to year drastically, but then not like semi to semi. That's just how I saw it. I just don't know why you would like one and not the other. But I think it's fine. I'm obviously curious to see what workouts there are. And I didn't hate this year either. I think there's a lot of different ways. It's a longer conversation, but I think as a whole, most athletes are going to prefer this. I can say that. I think there's a lot of different ways to do programming at semis, and this one's fine.
I think the cool thing about the old format, right, like 5-week open straight to regionals, was the luck of the draw was when you went, right? You wanted to go first or you wanted to go last. You didn't want to be in the middle, because then there's a lot of strategy you can pick up along the way. You can see a bunch of different people approach it a bunch of different ways. And so I love this format. I think these are the tests. Now we can have the world record things again. We can say, guy at X region, Brent set the world record for blah, blah, blah chipper, right? So it's, there's no wild cards. And I know last year a lot of bullets people were sweating bullets over which semi they were going to, because now they've developed a reputation, right? Nobody wants to be outside at Granite Games, really. Like, I doubt that was your first pick to go lose 26 pounds in the sun and bake and do all the weird stuff you got to do. And so, Mac, hey, long, grindy stuff, Syndicate wild card because it's a new one. But so they're developing reputations. Now, here's the test. Here's your week to go. So I'll be interested to see how they do the flow of, like, the schedule of it. Like if it's everybody one weekend or whatever. Did they put that out yet?
the schedule of semifinals?
Yeah.
No.
Or like how they're going to do it?
Yet.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I love the fixed programming. I think the wild card stuff was like could have been really cool. Did not seem like it was executed very well this year. And then the ones they threw out were kind of toss outs, right? Especially at this point. 2014, that legless workout, ruthless. Now, like not.
Yeah, well,
so.
I think like my opinion with this year's programming, I think as a whole, it was fine, semi to semi. I think when you include a workout like the running legless one, I don't think it's necessarily bad. But what it does is if you have a 6-event competition, that sort of becomes the sprint workout, but it didn't really test power. And then it also sort of is it's a high level, or not high level, but you're limited by your gymnastic ability, right? You're mostly limited by how good you are at legless rope climbs. And usually in a workout where you're limited by gymnastics, it's usually like higher rep and cycle speed. So it's usually like a high rep chest to bar handstand push-up workout or muscle up workout. And so it kind of checked those two boxes, but sort of didn't. And so it sort of left, a lot of competitions didn't really have that really high power output anaerobic workout, like, 30, 20, 10 assault bike, burpee, sandbag clean. Like there wasn't that type of workout at a lot of semis, which is fine, but that also is sort of common. And so I don't know, I guess like I think the workout choices when you only have 2, that was like an interesting choice because it sort of canceled out like the short power output workout, and it maybe eliminated the high level gymnastics out of another test because you only had 4 left, yet it didn't really test those in the ways we typically see them. So, there's a lot of different, we could talk about programming at semis for like 3 hours.
Right.
But I think this is fine. I think standardized is good. And I think it'll be well received. Like I think people liked regionals because that's what they were used to seeing. Whether it like conceptually is the strongest format or not is up for debate. I think there's other like unique things that could be done, but I do like it. I think it's good.
Something else that was kind of debated about on both sides was the last chance qualifier. And now we're seeing that the last chance qualifier is no more. They're getting rid of it. Dex, I'll let you start. What are your thoughts on the elimination of that?
I like it as a coach. I don't want to, send my person who was close, setting yourself on fire, that emotional peak out, burnout where you need a long time off. Now you got maybe a week you can kind of dice it up and then get back to staying in shape for the LCQ to where you're definitely selling your soul to try to get to the games. And so it's just another checkpoint to have to crush your CNS. And then like you get to the show, which is not long after the LCQ. But if we're standardizing everything, it seems like the road is clear to the show being the games. And like, it's not necessary, right? Like I think you need the LCQ if there are wild cards, like not standardized programming. And so it's not necessary now, I don't think.
Brent, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in concept, I like the idea of the last chance qualifier. Just in the case that let's say you're at a semifinal and you're under the weather, you're sick, or maybe you just get railroaded by a really bad judging call. And you place in 6th because you came last in some workout because this judge is just on you about something, or they miscounted your reps and your peel doesn't go through, something kind of crazy, or there's an equipment malfunction, kind of that like really crazy stuff that's out of your control. I wouldn't really call sickness out of your control. The tough thing with it last chance qualifier is, it's so quick after the semis that, if you were like a little injured or you were a little sick, you're going to have a tough time like turning things around in like 2 weekends anyway. So you're probably not going to have a massively different result. So really it's like a safeguard if, a really high caliber athlete, had a slip up at semis that was really outside of their control. I would say something like a judging error or a, equipment malfunction. But I get it. Like, in the last 2 years they tried it out, or maybe it's been 3 years now where they've tried out the LCQ, and, you got some good athletes through it. Like you saw this year, Fikowski, right? Like he made it through the last chance qualifier and then did quite well at the games. And he's been, in the top 10 multiple times. So someone who deserves to be there, and just had a bit of an off weekend at semis. I think he was a bit under the weather. So it's like, I get it from that perspective. Definitely puts a lot of pressure on your performance at semis, which, pressure makes the brightest diamonds.
Do you think that that's just sport though? If you're sick at the Super Bowl and you underperform, or, you could interchange it with any other sport.
Yeah. But, they don't do muscle ups at the Super Bowl. Isn't that the CrossFit answer? Is that right?
But how many pull-ups can they do? Yeah, no,
Right.
I am not.
I know that asshole makes
Oh,
25 million a year, but can he do muscle ups? Yeah, it's my favorite.
Let it be known that all the CrossFitters at the games are only there because they failed at playing a real sport. But
let it be known.
If they had to play knockout, then it's game over for everybody looking cool. Game over.
I mean, it's every sport's different. You hear it, athlete qualifying for the Olympics, and they kind of have one shot, one opportunity, and they miss out. But then there's other ways that you can qualify. Let's say it's for the Olympics, and you kind of have multiple opportunities to make it, or whether that's at a certain point in every competition season, there's going to be like a do or die moment, right? Obviously at the CrossFit Games, every workout is very important if you want to win. And it's it comes down to kind of the same argument as like the cuts at the games, where it's like, well, you want to win, you gotta It's like, well, like, what are we doing here? Are we trying to get the best people to the games with like the least amount of possibility for mistakes, or are we trying to make it super exciting? And you're going to have, there's a gradient there, and I think what they've chosen is fine. But I also, if they kept the last chance qualifier, I don't think I'd be upset either. Either would be fine.
This episode is brought to you by UCAN. Who can? You can. At least I can with UCAN, with one of their easy squeeze pouches that give me the energy I need to get through my workout without causing a crash. When I work out early in the morning but don't want to on an empty stomach because we know mid-wad I'm going to be hangry, I grab one of their super easy on the stomach bars. Chocolate almond butter? Yes, please. I may not be a games athlete yet, but UCAN helps me stay focused and energized during my workouts. It delivers steady release carbs for long-lasting energy without spiking blood sugar levels, the key to sustaining peak performance and focus and recording videos like these. Trusted by top CrossFit pros like Scott Panchik and Emily Rolfe, get your hands on these goodies and even save 20% on your first order with our code CHALKUP. Link in the description. Now back to the episode. And with getting rid of the last chance qualifier, they're using those spots in another way. A semifinal can now be awarded additional CrossFit Games qualifying spots based on the strength of the field that are present at the specific event. And the previous last chance qualifier spots will be allocated to various semifinal competitions based on the strength of the field. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is a location like Oceania. I feel like every year we talk about them needing more games tickets. Does that kind of potentially alleviate a problem like that?
Yeah, I think that's the I feel like they always keep a card in their pocket to slap down on the table, and that's the one they've got this year. We're going to allocate it as we see. Like, how do you make that the strength of the field, and how do you pick?
Right, how do you quantify it? I'm curious to see how they do.
Which, I mean, there's numbers out there, right? Like who's been there, whatever. But yeah, that just seems like the card to stick in the pocket. Like, I think one of my favorite years is when they like invited the High Rocks guy. What's his name? Hunter. Yeah. So they keep a card. They keep a card to slap down. So I'm cool for it. But yeah, I mean, that's a weird little kind of loophole thing to throw out. I wish they'd have like 5 blowhard cards every year they give people. That would make things exciting. Yeah. Isn't that what Greg used to call it, a blowhard card? Probably layers to that one now that we know.
I don't think I've heard that one.
No, it's definitely that's online somewhere, him saying that, because it was like guys that talk shit about CrossFit. I didn't make up that old man term. That's definitely a Greg term.
Yeah, I mean, from what I read, it seems like they're going to implement like an actual world ranking. So like maybe it'll be like on my games profile, where I think that's kind of what I inferred from it, where it's like, they'll take the last, whether it's just your games rank or your semis games rank or your last 3 years of ranking at your best competition or whatever. I don't really know. Maybe they'll use Wadapalooza and, Dubai or Rogue or I think that's really promising, because then it can kind of start to set a precedent for
pro card.
Yeah. For a pro card.
Yeah, dude.
And then when you have a world ranking that's based on like, concrete merit, and that's kind of set in stone each year as to like, this is how we rank you, then that can also make a lot of sense when it comes to like, when you get an invitation to an event, whether that's Wadapalooza or Dubai, it can be based off merit and not based off Instagram following.
I like that a lot. That's a good point.
And then, it's all, and another thing too, like, you go to a competition and the first event of the weekend, typically they seed the heats based on, your like how you qualified. So let's say, in quarterfinals, the top heat is the men who are placed first 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 in quarters. Maybe that ranking, the people in that heat would actually be based on your world ranking, which I think would be better. Because you see it every year, someone who makes it through an online qualifier and then they like aren't doing very well. They're not doing very well. And it's like, oh, it'd be nice if, the person that's tried and tested, like Travis Mayer this year at the Granite Games, started in the lower heat in the first workout. And then by the end of the weekend, he was right near the top. And someone like that, it's like, hey, we know that he's probably going to finish in the top 10. Like, is there a way to get him into that top heat to start things? Because that can be a big advantage or disadvantage. And so with that, I think what'll be interesting when they talk about allocating those slots is it to semis. It seems as though, without saying it, that they're kind of going against what they said they were going to do in 2019, 2020, which was allocate game seats based on open participation.
Correct.
Yeah.
It seems like a bit of a flip there, right? Which I think is good because, I love that, the community's involved in the open, but, if all of a sudden out of the blue, 1 million people do the open in, I don't know, like China, Asia, it's like, should all of a sudden they get 6 game spots? It's like, probably not,
They'll be the bottom 6 people.
Yeah, they'd probably, other than Roman, the athletes that have qualified through Asia have had a pretty tough go at the games historically. So, it's nice that it seems the athletes that are being qualified to the CrossFit Games seem to be based on, hopefully they'll be based on some sort of world ranking average of maybe the top athletes in each semi. And so maybe we'll see, like the West semi get more spots than the East semi, or, Europe get less spots than East, or whatever that looks like. And that can kind of fluctuate based off not just favoritism, but like concrete metrics. And then, and then also brings a little bit of like kind of national pride where, maybe I know I'm going to be in, the West for the next however many years. And so I might be cheering for my West brethren to have a good season. So as a whole, we can lift each other up and increase, the amount of spots that we have as representation at the CrossFit Games in the following year, which is what you see in like Olympic weightlifting in Canada. You're working as a Canadian group to hopefully get, 2, maybe 3 spots at the Olympics for your 3 best weightlifters. And so like the 7th best weightlifter that has no real shot of qualifying for the Olympics is trying to get like a competitive total at an international meet to boost the nation's like ranking and then get one more athlete to the game, to the Olympics. So it's kind of something like that. I think there's a lot of potential. Once you have that world ranking system in place, you can tweak it yearly, but once it's in place, there's like a lot of cool applications that are just going to benefit the sport, benefit the athletes.
I think the more consistent it is too, the more it opens them up to like the development into professionalism, right? I mean, we drew the parallel for like the PGA Tour and pro card stuff. If that's a system, then now we've freed it up. Hey, here's a clear path. You have to do X amount of competitions. You got to rank here, and this is how you get pro card points. If you don't maintain your performance throughout the years, it's gone. And so then it makes it make way more sense. It probably opens up more revenue opportunities for athletes throughout the year and stuff like that. And where it's like Brent said, not based on your Instagram followers or any of that. It's based on athletic merit and your body of work and things you've actually done, not cool videos you put together. So.
Yeah. And on that same token, I'll just add in one more thing, in a sport that constantly changes, like every competition you go to, the programming is different and there's no rules governing what is good and what is bad programming. So in a sport like this, it makes more sense, I think, to judge athletes based on, a variety of placings, as many placings as possible, as opposed to you're only as good as your last competition. And most of what we see in the sport is, whether it's invitations to an event or qualifications, it's always like, what have you done for me lately? Like, what was your last competition placing is what gets you to the next competition, like full story, end of, that's it, full stop. Which I get, it's high stakes, but in a sport that's constantly changing and every competition you go to, the workouts are different. I think like when you have consistent high placings, it means a lot more than maybe like a flash in the pan. Then you get a bunch of invites for a year, and then it's like, oh, was that like worthy or not? I don't know. So I think it's great. World rankings, big news.
I would say one of the other really big changes that we're seeing is the amount of days for the CrossFit Games. So originally in previous years, it was 5 days. There was supposed to be the built-in rest day, but obviously the weather kind of prevented that. So athletes had to, or individual athletes at least, were working out, doing events from Wednesday through Sunday. Now it kicks off on Tuesday through Sunday. We don't know if there's rest days built in. We have no idea what this is going to look like or how many events, but an additional day.
I wonder if that means they spread the programming out, though. I mean, because the craziest stuff to me is like, and you can look back at some years of regionals where they pack so many things into that little window. That's what makes it brutal, right? That quick turnaround, the inability to have time to recover and stuff like that. You can go Tuesday to Sunday, 1-2 bangers a day, depending on, the modalities and if it's a single modality thing or just some, tearing it.
Dex.
Uh-oh.
Your Alabama internet today has not been good. All right, Brent, you go while he tries to figure it out.
I mean, I know it. He could. Not that I'm Mr. Brevity either, but I'll try and condense it. Basically, we don't. For one, we don't know if those 6 days are, from interests of someone like myself, are just for individuals. So in the past, I think the CrossFit Games was 6-7 days in Carson, but you do like all the masters and the teams would like basically be finished by the time the individuals would start, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do like a Tuesday, Wednesday for teams and into teenagers into masters, and then like they'd be done by Thursday basically. So it could be something like that as well. And then to Dex's point, it's usually intensity and like multiple workouts in a day that is like the most challenging to recover from, and like from a soreness and perspective. So if they just spread it out over more days, like let's say we had the same amount of workouts as we did this year, and they just add one more and they spread it out, it's like it'd probably be just the same or easier. Not that easy is kind of relative. It's always hard.
Yeah.
But
I feel like you get better
shots.
shots. You get better shots like that, right? Like then it turns into throwing darts. Now we got to be on for every one. And then it takes out the kind of war of attrition skill, right? I mean, it's still there. You need to recover, do your kind of athlete due diligence. But then I've got to be on. If we start Tuesday and I know it's X amount of events, there can be less room for that error, So that'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't really, we don't really know what that looks like. I think it'll be fine though. It's one extra day. Obviously, from a travel perspective, that could change people's from like a spectator perspective. If they're gonna, in the past, it's like, oh, I'll come, Thursday to Sunday, and now it's like, oh man, am I gonna come for Tuesday to Sunday? Maybe I'll just do Saturday, Sunday, So we'll see. But I think it's fine. It's cool. And again, I think what's promising about that is that they're announcing that so far in advance.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really impact me or most people, but it just shows that they're probably already planning like the programming, or maybe the offsite event that they're planning is already like kind of in the works. And I think a lot of issues we've seen in the past with like the big highlight reel mistakes that have been made maybe at the CrossFit Games, whether it be like a movement standard or like a inequality between lanes, if workouts are written a day before they're being performed, those issues are going to happen. Right? But the further in advance you can write an event and have more eyeballs on it, more time to chew over it and think about it overnight, there's going to be less mistakes and the workouts are just going to be better. And so that's just like, if they're looking that far in advance, the CrossFit Games, it's super promising. Like I've always thought, the workouts should be like signed, sealed, delivered like 2 months in advance. It's not, it's not out of the question.
And tested on site. Yeah. Tested on site.
And they obviously have to be kept under wraps, which I think is definitely, it's a conversation for another day. But, the sooner in advance you you have the workouts written and the weekend planned, then you can have like a really strong marketing presence for the fans. For the on-site fans, for the off-site fans, the media package is going to be stronger, and then the flow for the athlete days is going to be much better. We're not going to be like waiting in an airport all day, like, oh, we might be doing, no, we're not doing the workout yet. Oh, we don't have the time cap yet. Like all those things, if those are all done in advance, the weekend's just better for everyone. So I think that's a positive.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, I think the more consistent they are with the flow of the season, the better those things will get, right? If you're riding the same bike all the time, you learn that bike. And so like, like when you started 2013, 14, it was 60 people in 2013 that went to regionals. I remember everybody had a heart attack when they cut it to 40 for 2014, me included. And even more so the next year when they went top 20 and they combined regions for super regionals. It's just something like that every year. And so if they're going back to that kind of straightforward path, clear path from start to finish for the season, then it'll get better. But I think like I remember 2019, the national champ year with the sanctionals and then the spooky open we did in October, like that was kind of a shit show. And then, so I'd love for it to be consistent and they're like, hey, this is the CrossFit season. Like I know NFL starts in September and then the playoffs, right? And I know when these seasons start, what that looks like, road to the championship. So legitimizing the sport, I think it's a big step for us to do the same thing in the flow of that. So that's exciting.
So Brent, what's your bottom line? Is this a positive direction for CrossFit with these season structure changes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a tough time picking out a negative. You could always maybe personally have some really small changes you might make, but as a whole, it's definitely all positive. And it's just great that they're kind of putting the flag in the sand early so the fans and the athletes can be well informed. Yeah, I'm excited.
Dex, bottom line.
Yeah, that's it. The clarity that they're given and how far up front they're being about it is great. I think, like Brent said, it sets everybody up to be more involved, and they're pushing people back to affiliates, it seems like, in the first part of the season, which is just more buy-in on more levels, which benefits everybody, CrossFit as a whole. Like I said, I'm excited about it coming down here to a not fit aware area and making that more accessible earlier is so much better, like Brent said, for the marketing packages. So no negatives for me. It'll be great.
Awesome. Dex, Brent, thank you guys so much. And there are some other changes that were made. We have a link in our YouTube description that has all of the details for the adaptive division and the team division that also have some changes. But until next time, we'll see you guys then.